Welcome to AustraliaX for 2022. We're only a few short weeks into the year and there has been a number of positive announcements as Australia welcomes back international students for the start of the academic year. Today's session will break down what you need to know before you arrive in Australia and what you need to prepare and what the student experience looks like for the year that kicks off ahead. I'd like to start off by acknowledging the custodians of the country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures, to elders past and present. Let us walk together and take care of earth and water as one. We'd like to welcome today's panel who bring together many years of experience working with and supporting the international students that are here in Australia. Alicia and Sharon are joining us from QS Enrollment Solutions, the leading global provider of student recruitment services and insights into the higher education sector. The QS team provides future students with guidance to help with their decisions to study overseas. And also we have John and Heidi, and they are from Navitas Global. Heidi is the Director of Marketing and Admissions at Griffith College, which is part of Navitas. And John Chu is one of the world's leading market analysts in international education. He was previously a principal at Australian management consulting firm, the Nous Group, and is now Head of Strategic Insights and Analytics at Navitas. So we welcome you all and we look forward to your insights moving forward. Speaking of thanks, I'd like to thank the sponsor for today's webinar, PTE Academic. For many international students, English language testing is one of the first steps in their study abroad experience. And with PTE Academic, that step is made a whole lot easier. So by using powerful technology, PTE Academic just takes 2 hours of testing for your English and provides accurate results available within 2 days. Whether you're improving your skills for study, work or migration, PTE Academic has you covered. If you'd like to find out more about PTE, you can click on the link that will be provided in the chat. So just a little bit of housekeeping. The live Q&A is available, but we ask you to keep the questions for the panel as general as possible and recommend that you connect with your institution before arriving to have your questions answered. We'd like to try and answer as many questions as we possibly can. We'll be sharing a lot of links in the chat as well, and there will be a recording soon available to you. So it'd be fantastic for you to have a look at that. So please keep an eye on that section. So let's get started. So first and foremost, we'd like to bring in Alicia and Sharon from QS. So welcome. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you, Boris, and thank you to Insider Guides and PTE for inviting us along today, and to our fellow presenters, John and Heidi from Navitas. So thank you all, future students who signed up to the webinar today. I hope you've had a happy new year with family and friends and that you're really getting excited about study in Australia. My name's Alicia Bartle. I'm the General Manager of QS Enrollment Solutions here in Australia. And joining me today is Sharon Baines, our Head of Student Success. We're an organisation that supports tens of thousands of future international students every year as they make their plans to study in Australia. We're best known for the QS World University Rankings, which are the most trusted rankings that future students use around the world when making their study decisions. While we won't be discussing rankings today, you can view them on our website at topuniversities.com. But today we'll be sharing with you some of the common questions we're receiving from students right now, particularly those students about to commence their studies in Australia. We'll explore some of the most important information you need to know before the February intake begins. Okay, so every year at QS, if we just move to the next slide, Sharon, we survey future international students really wanting to study in Australia and find out what they think about studying here. And in our most recent survey, over 75,000 students told us about the strengths that they see about studying in Australia as a destination. And you can see that they're beautiful, clean, safe, welcoming, and modern. And whilst it has been a challenge over the past 2 years with Australian borders closed to future international students, I'm so pleased to say that international students are now being welcomed back to Australia. We've seen the number of student visa approvals increasing every month, and visas are being approved. And we've seen students start to land in Australia in flights from all across the world. So we're so happy to welcome students back to our shores and to have international students once again contribute to the diverse study environment in Australia. In our conversations with future students with an offer to study, we're hearing a lot of optimism and positivity about studying in Australia. Students can see the light at the end of the tunnel and those borders opening up, and the opportunity to study on campus once again, which students do tell us is their preferred study option. Students are happy to get vaccinated and follow the latest travel guidelines with the opportunity to study in Australia and have that adventure of a lifetime overseas. So we're delighted to hear that positivity from future students, which has really been increasing over the past couple of months. I'll hand over to Sharon now, who'll talk a little bit about preparation for travel to Australia.
Thank you, Alicia. Hi, guys. I'm Sharon. And I'm from QS in Kuala Lumpur. And I believe someone said hello from Malaysia, so hello to you too. And I'm going to start my presentation by sharing about what you need to do to prepare yourself for travels to Australia. Perhaps one of the common questions from offer holders who are planning to come to Australia would be, what do I need to prepare? First things first is I recommend that you accept your offer. That is the first thing that you'll need to do, is to accept your offer. And once you've accepted your offer, you can then submit your visa application. Once the visa has been received, the next thing that I recommend we do in this situation would be to organize for your travel arrangements and flights. As we all know, flights can be scarce these days. So this should definitely be on your priority list. Once that's completed, do apply, or rather get yourself some travel insurance. Read the terms and conditions to make sure that the travel insurance covers the delays in flights. And of course, once you get to Australia, you will need accommodation. So that's another thing that you will need to prepare yourself for. Do visit or log into your university websites and search the available accommodations for your specific universities. And the other thing that I like to just highlight today is the fact that different states in Australia may have different entry rules. So it is also very, very important for you to understand what the rules are. And of course, approved vaccines, that's given. We really need to ensure that we have approved vaccines by the government of Australia. And finally, we need to understand how semester 1 will commence once you get to the campus. Some of the points to note, especially during these COVID times, would be to understand what the exemptions are, if any, quarantine requirements, vaccine certifications, travel declarations, and pre-departure COVID-19 tests. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, you need to ensure that you have recognized vaccines and doses. You need a 7-day period since the last dose to be counted as fully vaccinated. What I've provided here is the link for you to visit to get the most accurate information regarding travels to Australia. You may find a lot of travel advice on the internet, but the most accurate and up-to-date travel advice would be on the Department of Home Affairs website. So do take some time and visit the website We will share the link with you in the chat for your convenience. What are the common questions that we receive from students, from international students lately would be if they can return to their home country while studying in Australia? So the answer is definitely a yes. Fully vaccinated students can return to their home countries as long as the border restrictions of your home country allows it. And of course, when you're coming back to Australia, you need to again take a COVID-19 test, and it has to be negative. Oops, apologies for that. And of course, then the other thing that I mentioned earlier was the state entry requirements. It is very, very important for us to understand what the different requirements are of different states. So, dependent on which university you're planning to enroll in, it would be really good to understand all the rules that apply to you. And for that, I definitely recommend that you visit the website as I have indicated here, which is the australia.gov.au/states. The information available there will certainly help you in your preparation. And of course, student visas. What do you need to know? The best thing about the student visa right now is that there is a visa payment waiver, which is fantastic news, for a duration of 8 weeks from the 19th of January to the 19th of March. If you are an international student, who is currently holding an international student visa for Australia, and you are arriving in Australia from the period from the 19th of January to 19th of March, there will be a visa application fee refund for you. And for more information for visa payment waivers and possibilities of the application fee refund, again, I urge that you visit the Department of Home Affairs website as well as the Insider Guides website to get more information on how this can be done. Now, you may wonder what happens if the visa processing gets delayed. What really happens is that the universities are adopting a very, very flexible approach to studies, really, for semester one. If you're not able to get your visa on time, all you need to do is to contact your universities, and there could be a possibility of you starting online first, and then to continue to an on-campus mode once you arrive at the university. So, of course, this is university dependent. And some students may also prefer to defer their studies to a later intake. And in saying this, it also depends on what program you're taking. Some programs are very practical centric, so that could be a little tricky. But in general, I definitely recommend that you speak to your university if this is the situation. And the other common question that we face with international students would be, what can I expect in semester one? So basically, most universities in Australia are offering a hybrid teaching and learning mode at the moment. So some programs can be online, and part of it could be on a more on-campus mode. Some programs could be offered simply online and no option to be offered on-campus mode. And some programs that are practical centric may only be offered on campus. So this really, really depends on what program you sign up for and also on your university. I just wanted to share a little bit of statistics about online study. So we recently asked some international students in a survey, in an international student survey on what they thought about studying online if they were allowed to commence this year. Interestingly, a huge number of students really wanted to study online if they were allowed to commence this year. So that's a little bit of statistics just for your consideration. Over to you, Alicia, for employability.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Sharon. And one of the common questions we get from future international students is what career opportunities will be available when they are in Australia while they study, and also once they complete their studies. So when studying in Australia, it's likely you'll want to have a part-time job to help with your living expenses and also to feel a part of the community. It's also a great way to meet new people and really experience the culture of Australia. The good news is that the Australian government has just announced a temporary relaxation of work restrictions for international students. This means there's currently no restriction on the number of hours that students can work while studying in Australia. It also means students who have already arrived in Australia can actually start working even before the beginning of their course. Usually, those on a student visa are only allowed to work up to 40 hours a fortnight. However, I will ask you to keep in mind that it's still very important that you are satisfactorily passing your course requirements and you're really balancing those work and study commitments. You are still here to get that beautiful, enriching study experience in Australia. It's also worth mentioning that education providers offer a lot of support with career services, and this is something that not all students are aware of. Once you arrive in Australia, contact the careers service on campus for help with things like interviewing skills and resume writing skills. This can really help get your first job in Australia and also help once you finish your studies in joining the workforce. And there are a lot of employers out there in Australia right now looking for employees in areas like tourism and hospitality, significant availability for roles in things like health services. So it's worth keeping in mind that where you can, it's also good to work in your study area while you study. Once you complete your degree, Australia has favourable post-study work rights for you to continue to stay in Australia. So for those who've completed a bachelor's, a master's or doctoral degree, you can usually stay between 2 and 4 years depending on your qualification. And Hong Kong and British national overseas passport holders can actually stay for up to 5 years. And on this kind of visa, you actually are able to have your immediate family members stay with you as well. And some students have already been studying online from their home country, and you may be one of those. One of the questions we get is, will your online study time count towards your post-study work visa? And the answer is yes. If you've been studying from your home country online with a student visa, it will count towards the post-study work period. Study Australia also has excellent employability resources that can support you when getting a job. So there's actually a micro-credential available, a short study module that can help you prepare for the workforce in Australia. And they have a whole employability hub with many valuable resources. And if we move over to the next slide, thank you, Sharon. At QS, we've done some research with employers and with students to understand the top skills that employers want to see on the left and what skills students believe that employers want to see on the right. And what's really important here is that the most important skill for employers in Australia are communication skills, problem solving, and resilience. Many education providers in Australia will give students the opportunity to work on real-world projects with employers to further develop these skills that employers are looking for. And I would encourage you to choose subjects while you are studying with practical components where you can really develop these skills. On the other side, students believe employers want employees who show leadership skills, creativity, and language skills. The good news is that when you first get a job, employers don't expect you to have leadership skills from day one. It's expected that those leadership skills will develop over time, and your employers will assist you with developing those skills. Many employers are looking for employees that show resilience, and over the past 2 years, we have all had to develop the skill of resilience as we manage the challenges of the pandemic. As international students coming to Australia, you're also showing incredible resilience by moving to a new country, embracing the challenges of studying overseas and sometimes in a new language. And by doing this, you're developing an incredibly important skill, which is a strength that you should be proud of when applying for a job. And it's something that's highly valued by employers. I'll hand over to Sharon now, who'll talk about using the right resources to search for a university or education provider.
Thank you, Alicia. All right, so I'd like to cover a little bit about the resources that are available to you as a student if you are still searching for a university or trying to understand what your interest is in terms of programs. So, of course, there are plenty of resources out there, right from the university website to general online search, social media, rankings, and institutional information session. So I'll just elaborate a little bit about the university website. Majority of our international students definitely rely on the information that's available on the university website. You don't only get information pertaining to entry requirements, you also get information on what you call that, the program and what you can do after you graduate, right up to scholarship. And not only that, the university website also provides you with recorded webinars. So the webinars could be centered around either an open day or related to a program, which will further assist you to make the right decision for yourself. You may also wonder, how do you connect or engage with the universities in Australia? So most universities support all channels, really. You have email, WhatsApp, phone calls, live chats, SMS, and Facebook. However, to get responses quickly and in a timely manner, a phone call or real-time chat is definitely recommended. I do urge that you look at the website and look at the operational hours, and also to ensure what the time difference is between your home country and Australia in order to make full use of the phone call as well as the real-time chats. Finally, as an international student of Australia, I'd like to give you a little bit, or rather share some tips with you. If you're new to this and you're just about to go to Australia, first things first, when you arrive, do call your mother, and do not take this lightly. She may not tell you or show it to you, but she will be worried. We have had situations where mothers of our international students have contacted the universities to look for either their son or their daughter. So please do remember to do that. And the next thing would be, you've stepped out of your comfort zone. You've stepped out of your home country. Make full use of it. Make Aussie friends. Explore different cultures. And Australia is a beautiful place. I have to admit, it is a beautiful place. Explore. Take time. Explore Australia. You may either speak to your Aussie friends for some recommendations or go to the Insider Guide website. It's a great resource for all international students. The other thing that I found really helpful as an international student in terms of adapting and also making more friends is to join the on-campus clubs and societies. This was definitely exciting for me. Having said that, I conclude our presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alicia and Sharon. That presentation was lovely, and there was so much useful information there, and also so many links were sent through on the chat. So as you're well aware, we are recording this, so please don't feel like you need to be scrambling to write everything down. You will be able to see it soon, and we thank you both for giving us such a thorough presentation. But now we'll also like to talk to John and Heidi, who are looking to expand on this conversation and will be able to help us with some more useful details. Please, John and Heidi, take it away.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here. Let me start us off by sharing my screen. What I'm going to try to cover off quite quickly today, 3 broad questions, which should come up shortly on the screen share. For many of you who might be considering Australia as a study destination, there are probably 3 broad questions that might be on your mind. First of all, let's not beat around the bush. Is Australia safe and is it welcoming? I think this is a potential reputational issue that Australia has had over the last couple of years. Let me address that head on right from the get-go. I'll also talk about this other sort of burning question that some of you might have. Obviously, the borders have been closed for quite a few years now, or a couple of years, many months. And along the way, perhaps there have been instances where people have felt a little bit of a lollipop syndrome, where borders looked like they were going to open and then they didn't. How can you, as a student, be confident that the borders will not close again? And I think there's good reason to be very confident about that, and I'll come to that. And then the third question, we've all been through a tough couple of years. Myself and my family, we've been in isolation for the last 2 weeks as all of us caught COVID, thankfully very mild, and we've moved on. But there have been impacts from the last couple of years on all of us. So I want to talk a little bit more about that and take you through some thoughts. So on this first question, is Australia safe? Is it welcoming? Well, Navitas has been running various surveys along the way. This was a survey that we did in October, and you can see we were asking education agents in particular whether Australia's reputation as being safe and stable on the left and open and welcoming on the right had it improved. And you can see, but even just in October, which was only 4 months ago, it wasn't a pretty picture. Most agents were telling us the UK, US, Canada were much more safe and stable. And if you remember at the time, Australia was lagging behind quite a bit in terms of vaccination rates. The US, Canada, and the UK had much higher vaccination rates back in October. And of course, on open and welcoming, no surprise. Again, it was much easier to travel to the US, UK, and Canada, and impossible to get into Australia at the time. But rest assured, things have changed very dramatically, even in the last, I'd say, 4 to 6 weeks. Even for someone like myself that's been trying to predict when borders would open, it's been a lovely surprise to see that borders have opened for international students, and I'd say it's close to a 0% chance that they will be closed again. And why is that? I sort of offer 3 panels here for you to think about. Number one, our vaccination rates from lagging behind in October, we're now amongst the highest in the world. The Australian government measures the vaccination rates by in terms of the proportion of those over 16 that have been vaccinated. And this is the very latest data from 1 or 2 days ago. More than 95% of the population above 16 has had at least 1 dose. 93% have had 2 doses. and 7 million, in fact, have had their booster shots. So this is we're a population of about 24, 25 million. So that's significant. I think the Prime Minister has been very clear that he wants Australia to push through. And you can see in that quote in the middle, very much committed to pushing through this next phase of the Omicron strain. And that is the medical advice that he's receiving. That is the government's commitment to keep Australia open and to push through. And that was a quote just from a couple of weeks ago. And then the third consideration is, as Alicia and Sharon have mentioned, there are different rules for different states, but they're pretty much all coming into alignment with each other now. So we had, quite a period where that complexity, different rules across different states was a bit confusing. We're seeing much more consistency now as everyone sort of adopts the same requirements around vaccinations, around campuses being open, quarantine requirements, and the like. Even the state of Western Australia over the last couple of days has made some big changes to align itself with the rest of the states. So how do we know if the government is committed to welcoming international students back to Australia? Hopefully from Alicia and Sharon's presentation, you picked this up, but I can give you 4 clear policies that show that commitment. So we have to remember that international students have already started arriving into Australia since the 15th of December. We've had many thousands apply for visa. I've been looking at that data, many thousands arriving into the country, very often without the need to quarantine because they're double jabbed. Full work rights, we've already touched on that in the previous presentation, as well as the additional post-study work rights, which is, again, part of the government's strategy to make Australia more welcoming, more attractive. And then this visa application fee rebate for the next 8 weeks. I think all of these are very clear signs that the borders are open and the government intends for it to stay that way. Now, what about the question around, the impacts of the pandemic on all of you, I guess, as students over the last couple of years? Let me take you through a little bit of a quiz, if you like. There's nothing really scientific about this quiz, so take it with a pinch of salt, but it's hopefully going to help you think through how has COVID-19 impacted you, and what does that mean about how you think about study, especially tertiary study, which is a big step for most young people going into university. So the first slide here is around, what are the important factors to you as a student? Again, this is from our agent survey, but we've seen many other surveys, including surveys by QS, that look at what's important to international students. And it's really, some pretty common factors that have risen to the top. It's usually around costs, is there post-study work rights? What's the quality of education? Can I get a visa? For a while, the COVID-19 impact and safety and security were right at the top of this list, but they've dropped back down now. So first question for you to think about is, are you personally still concerned about COVID-19? And if you answer yes, very much so, just note down 2 points. Yes, every now and then, it pops into your mind, maybe 1 point. If you've forgotten about COVID, you've moved on, give yourself 0. So COVID is one consideration, and how heavily that weighs on your mind. The second is around the disruption that your generation has seen around school closures during the pandemic. We know that the evidence is pretty clear that that missing school has negative consequences for learning and therefore for your readiness for university study potentially. This table here shows the different countries and the number of weeks during which there was either a full or a partial school closure over the last 2 years. And in places like India, Nepal, 82 weeks of school closures over the last 2 years, all the way to places like Malaysia, 61 weeks, Thailand, 52 weeks. So think about this for yourselves. Did you have more than 50 weeks of school closures in the last 2 years? How was your study, particularly if you're in high school? Those all important, year 10, 11, 12, Form 4, Form 5, Form 6. 50, if you were a country that had more than 50 weeks of closures, give yourself 2 points. Less than 50 weeks, 1 point. And if hardly any, if you were quite lucky like that, give yourself 0. Moving quickly along to the next question around the numbers of those of you that might have been absent from school. So even though there was schooling online or schools were open or partially open, we know that throughout the pandemic, for whatever reason, lots of students have had legitimate reasons to not be able to attend. And you can see in that chart there some examples from the US. Just the number of students in grades 8 to 12 that were chronically absent, so absent for quite a long period. For your own self-assessment, when school was open or online, were there days when you just had to skip classes? If you reckon probably more than you should have, give yourself 2 points. Just a bit of absenteeism, give yourself 1 point. And again, if you were fortunate and managed to maintain a very strong attendance over the last 2 years, give yourself 0 points. Just 2 more things for you to think about. There is an increasing amount of research and literature around this idea of unfinished learning. The basic idea is, again, this is using an American example. Pre-COVID, you've got an upward trajectory in the learning. During the holidays and during the disruptions during COVID, things go back a few steps. That you don't get to practice what you've learned. You don't get to reinforce what you've learned. You come out of the holidays maybe a little bit behind where you were, which is quite normal, I have to say. But because of COVID, you're a little bit further behind. And then over the next second year of schooling during the pandemic, again, more disruption leading to a little bit more of unfinished learning along the way. So the question for you to think about is, do you feel like you've had unfinished learning during the pandemic? So yes, if you think the last 2 years have, it's been sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 points for that. Yes, for 1 year, 1 point. And again, not at all, 0 points. So you should be able to track how you're going. And on this final question, what's the impact of the pandemic on your mental health? This is an increasing concern and a really valid concern, just the impact of disruption and isolation and the fears and anxieties around catching COVID, fears and anxieties around getting access to testing and vaccinations and all the rest of it. I think we can all identify with people who've been in these situations. And again, coming out from America, but also the rest of the world, there are Australian studies on this as well. There are increasing reports of mental health conditions and concerning behaviors. So how do you feel your mental health has been affected throughout the pandemic? Quite a lot, 2 points, just a bit, 1 point, not at all, 0 points. So I've asked you 5 questions now around your concerns about COVID, whether or not you had many, many weeks of school closures, potential issues around absenteeism that you might have faced, potential issues around the previous one, which was unfinished learning, and then around mental health. And just think about, if you score 2 points on all of those, you'd be sitting at around 10 points. What you're probably faced with, and you probably realize this yourself, is potentially a little bit of an achievement gap. So your potential is up here, and what you've actually achieved is not quite there. So something to think about is what are your options in respect to this scenario? Do you enter a course or a university at the level that you're at? Many universities are lowering their entry requirements, so that is a second option for you. And of course, a third option is around potential pathway programs that can help to get you back on track. So hopefully that gives you a little bit to think about and a little bit of confidence around Australia keeping its borders open. I should hand over to Heidi in the interest of time, but look forward to the rest of the presentation.
Thanks so much, John. I never get bored of seeing your presentations. And hello, everyone. My name is Heidi. I work for Navitas, but I'm also the Director of Marketing and Admissions for Griffith College. And I wanted to share with you some great things about Navitas and why studying in Australia is now a very exciting choice again for students. So Australia is welcoming international students back. No quarantine, no delays, no worries. So we are trying to get the message out to all students again why Australia is a popular destination to study. So the top 10 reasons to study in Australia, well, we have over 25 million people from over 200 nations living in Australia, which means almost 30% of Australians are born overseas, very diverse. We are in the top 3 study countries in the world for students to pick a study destination. And we have 7 of the best student cities in the world. Our universities rank in the world's top 50. We have 6 of the world's top 100 universities, but more important, like everyone has been saying before me, we're the safe country. People are happy here in Australia because they feel safe, because we have an outdoor lifestyle and a high standard of living, and we're always known as the lucky country. But more importantly, we have great opportunities, great job opportunities for students, not only while they study, but also after they graduate through the post-study work rights. And I'll go into that a little bit later. But who's Navitas and why should you choose Navitas as your study option in Australia? Well, we partner with universities across Australia to offer international students a successful study option for entry into higher degree education. These are the universities that we partner with across Australia through 5 states across Australia. And I'll go through those locations now. You can see all of our colleges that we have across Australia. There's 12 of them for you to choose from. And not only that, but students can now fly directly into the following states without the need to quarantine. We have Queensland is now open, and we have colleges in Griffith College in Brisbane and the Gold Coast. New South Wales is now open, as well as Canberra, and we have colleges in Sydney and Canberra as well. Victoria is also open, where you can study in Melbourne, and South Australia is open, where you can study in Adelaide. So we have lots of choices where you can come, fly directly into these states, study at our colleges without the need to quarantine. Please note, Western Australia, we do have colleges there. They haven't opened up yet for students to fly in there directly, but they will be opening soon. There are other options, though. If you want to study in Western Australia, we have colleges in Perth, and you can actually fly into other cities that are open and stay there for 14 days
and then you can go into Western Australia as long as you are not tested positive for COVID. So what's the cost of living in Australia? How much is the average cost for a student? Well, the estimated budget that you should save for 12 months, and this covers all living costs, including accommodation, food, lifestyle. We advise students to budget around $21,000 Australian dollars for the year. Options for accommodation varies. You have a budget, you have options that range from $90 all the way up to $440. And these are some options that I've listed here. You can stay at hostels and guest houses for as low as $90, or you can go right up to an apartment to rent or a studio to rent for $440 a week. It really does depend on where and the kind of accommodation you want. Living expenses, this is just a general guide of the Australian dollars, in Australian dollars of the budget that we advise students to allow for. And this all adds up to the general budget of $21,000 that we recommend students. But you can work while you study. You can work. We love, there's a lot of employment opportunities for students. And international students are now allowed to work unlimited hours. This will be reviewed in April, but it was only launched last week by the Australian government, this allowance for students to work unlimited hours. So make sure that if you're able to come and start in trimester 1, do, because there are great opportunities for you. So a bit about the Australian education system. We have school, we have primary and secondary school, but students come out of school after they've completed year 12. The year 11 and 12 is their senior study or secondary study at school. So once they've finished year 12, they can go into higher education, either a diploma or directly into the bachelor. We do have another option for students here as well. We have what's called a foundation program. Now, the foundation program is the equivalent to the final year of school for Australian students. So sometimes it's a great idea for international students to do the foundation program. We then have the option at Navitas for students, international students, to come into the diploma. The diploma is the equivalent of your first year at a Bachelor of University. So the great thing is you can do the diploma and go straight into second year of university. So that's what our colleges offer. Our colleges around Australia that I showed you before offer the option to do the diploma first. Why do the diploma? What's the benefits? Well, you're on university campus studying a higher education degree. You get extra support at the college because we offer smaller class sizes. So you get greater access to teachers. Teachers know your name. Most of our classes are no larger than 50 students, just so we can offer that personal touch. You can complete your diploma in 8 to 12 months. You can actually complete your diploma faster than doing your first year of university, which then takes you straight into the second year of a bachelor degree. And we have fantastic student success. Did you know that 95% of the students at Griffith College, or at most Navitas colleges, graduate without having to repeat a subject? So we have 95% student success rate straight into the second year of the bachelor. But more importantly, you can take your diploma as a higher education qualification, and in some cases, in a lot of cases, get entry-level employment in industry while you continue studying your bachelor. And a lot of our students do this, and we help them at the college find these job opportunities. So when can you start at a college? Well, we work off a trimester program, which is great. You can start your trimester in March this year. So every year we have trimester 1, 2, and 3, and these are the general months that we start each of these trimesters. So there's still time for you to join us for trimester 1, and here's how you can do that. These are the steps to take. You need an offer. You need to get your offer. Work with an international agent. We highly recommend students get an international agent to help them with all of the paperwork and submit that offer. Then once you submit your application, once you get your offer, accept it as soon as possible, because as soon as you accept it, you will get a confirmation of enrollment that you can use to get your visa. You can't get a visa until you get your confirmation of enrollment, which a lot of people call a COE. You can take that and apply for your visa, and this is where your agent will help you, all right? So you can be granted your valid student visa, and agents can be very helpful with this process. But more importantly, make sure you prepare for coming into Australia by getting proof of your vaccine. You have to be vaccinated, have the certificate of an approved vaccine that Australia will receive. And I'll go into that, but everyone else has covered on that as well. Then you need to complete the online declarations. And in the handbook that we have, the handout, I've created a handout with lots of links and lots of further information for all of this. Then you can fly into Australia. You can get ready to arrive. Have your passport, have your student visa ready, have your double vaccination certificates ready, and you can come into Australia. So don't delay your study, okay? Even if you can't get your visa and flight in time to start trimester 1, and you really want to start your study and an experience in Australia, I recommend you start online. You don't need a visa to start studying online. You can start studying online, and then while you're doing trimester 1, you can apply for your visa, get your visa, book your flights, and join us. So don't delay. And more importantly, keep an eye on advice from the Australian government, but also Study Australia has a fantastic website. And again, I've got the links in the handout. But also remember, each state has an approved international student arrival plan. So go to their websites. I've listed some here at the bottom, from Study Gold Coast to Study Sydney, Study Queensland. And again, I've listed them in my handout. Not only can you understand what the arrival plan is and everything you need to do to enter that state or city, but they have a website where you can explore what your study options are, what grants and scholarships are available, and more importantly, if you're looking for accommodation, they have great options for you. So make sure you visit their websites to get further details once you've picked the state or city you want to study in. Otherwise, go to Study Australia, and they have some great search options for you there as well. So good luck. I look forward to welcoming as many students as possible in Australia. Pick a Navitas college. We have great student success, and you don't waste any time. In fact, you can save time.
Thank you so much, John and Heidi. That was excellent. And thank you so much for the great, useful information. John, I'm definitely going back and looking at the point system again, because I think that was such a brilliant way to get across the idea of where you sit. So for everyone that's watching, definitely feel free to share that part of the presentation. I think that's definitely a worthwhile exercise to do moving forward. So look, we've received a number of questions, and thank you all for putting them through in our chat function. We do have some that haven't necessarily been answered fully as part of the presentation, so we'd love to go into them now. So first and foremost, we'll get Sharon to join me as part of the conversation. We'll wait for you to come along. So thanks, Sharon. So we received a number of questions about scholarships. So what scholarships are available for students in Australia, and where would you recommend students look to for these? And thirdly, the top tips as well as for the applications.
Sure thing. Thanks, Boris. So for scholarships, first things first, I definitely recommend that you visit the university website. The whole list of scholarships will be available to you. You will have information on the requirements, what's required, what forms need to be filled out on the university website. That should certainly be your first point to look for scholarships. Some universities also provide a scholarship for students who have put in an application and received an offer. So you don't have to apply. It's an automatic. It could be 10%, 20, up to 30%. There's also that situation. So definitely, I'd recommend that you start with the university website as your first point of reference for scholarship, because scholarships it could be based on merits as well, which is based on your previous results. So yeah, the best place to look for is certainly the university website. Now, coming to tips, that's a really, really good question there, Boris. Coming to tips, I'm going to start with accepting your offer. That's the first thing you need to do, because the terms and conditions for scholarship applications definitely stipulate that you first need to have an offer in hand to be able to apply for a scholarship. So that's the first thing that you need to do. And if you have been in communication with the universities through their websites, for instance, if you put in an inquiry, the universities will normally continue to provide you with updates on what's happening in the university through emails. So be sure to open up the emails and see what else is the university offering in terms of scholarship. So don't just leave those emails there. You may think that they're not important, but they could be really, really helpful. So do open those emails. Yeah, guys. And of course, apart from having just good results for some of the universities, you need to read the terms and conditions of the scholarship that you are applying for, because what you're applying for may not be most suited to you. So be sure to read those terms and conditions. Yep, those are the tips.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And really, really useful. I think there's just little bits and pieces that some might miss, and they were great. So thank you so much for that. We'd like to ask a question directly to Alicia, if that's okay. So we'll bring Alicia on board to be able to have a chat to us. So we can see that the poll results, which show that many students don't know where to look for updates. We obviously have touched a little bit on that, but just to address that question directly, what do you recommend for information, where to look for it, and to keep updated on news and requirements for entry into Australia?
Great question. Thank you, Boris. And I would say that the number one place to look for official updates about travel to Australia would be the Department of Home Affairs website, which has regular updates on the latest rules, the latest travel advice, and which vaccinations, for example, are accepted. It has information on COVID testing requirements for coming to Australia and for travelling between the states. So that's certainly a really helpful resource. The Study Australia website, I earlier provided the link to that, also has some really user-friendly information on unpacking the latest travel advice to Australia. The university website is a great resource in contacting the university if you need the latest information on courses and what is offered by the university. And finally, each state and territory has their own websites with local guidance depending on where you're going to be studying. So I saw a question in the chat around travelling to WA, and there were some announcements made by the Western Australian government yesterday. I believe Study Perth is still unpacking some of those changes, but my guess is that there will be information available on their website earlier in next week. So I'd be definitely keeping an eye on that, and I'm happy to share those links in the chat too.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And just also to add to that, Insider Guides provides information directly for international students. So we have border updates and breaking news that feature on our homepage, which help dissect and disseminate the information directly for international students. A lot of the time, the regular media, when they put out the information, may not necessarily make sense to international student community. So we try our best to fill in that gap. So please feel free to also check the resources that we provide as well. So thank you so much for that. We really appreciate that advice. So Heidi, we'd love to just have a quick chat with you as well. Just ask you a direct question, if that's okay. So Heidi, are institutions offering flexible study options for students who are still trying to enter the country, but perhaps unable to arrive before the semester or trimester commences? I know that you mentioned a little bit about Navitas, but what are your thoughts behind there?
Absolutely. That's actually something that's a priority for us, because we know that as much as a student wants to come and start on campus, it's reliant on how quickly they can get a visa and book a flight and book some accommodation. So you can absolutely start online. What you really need to do is, like everyone's saying, get your offer, accept your offer. The key document you need is your confirmation of enrolment, your COE. Okay, most universities will not allow you to even start online without that COE. You don't need a visa to start online, but you will need a COE. Once you have that COE, you can start online and work with your agent to get your visa, to book your flights, you book your accommodation. There's no rush after that, but make sure you get your COE for trimester 1 or whenever you want to study. That's the priority. Work with your agent to get that. And then you have time to get your visa. I highly recommend starting online. There's just one thing you have to know. In order for you to get your visa, you may need to do a minimum amount of subjects. So in the past, during COVID, there's been a lot of allowances from universities to do 1 or 2 subjects online. There may be a greater requirement, but that's okay. Work with your university, work with our colleges. Our colleges especially have flexible arrangements. So work with your institution to try and balance the study load while you're studying online.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Heidi. And look, that's such a really good clarification. And as always, contact your university directly as well. If you do have any further questions, we want to provide as general information as possible, but obviously talk to your uni, make sure that you get the answer from them about what's going on there. But Heidi, we really do appreciate that extra bit of information. So just a final comment to round out this conversation. I would love to bring everyone back on board. So obviously Heidi is still here with us, and Alicia and Sharon, please feel free to jump on. We'd like to just get one top tip from each of you in regards to international students currently trying to return to Australia. So I know that we've covered a lot of information, but if everyone was going to take away just one key takeaway from what you've mentioned, I'd love to hear what you think that is. So Sharon, we'd love to start with you. What would you say is the one key factor to remember from our chat today?
Thanks, Boris. So for me, the key factor is to first accept your offer. That's the first thing. If you have received an offer, then accept the offer. And if you do not have an international student visa as yet, then do apply. That would be my key point.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And Alicia, we'll jump to you as well. What would you say is your top tip in regards to this?
Thanks, Boris, and thank you to all the future students for being so resilient over the last couple of years. I would say keep up with that resilience and start online if you need to start your studies online. And then hopefully that means during the semester, you'll have time to get your student visa and fly back to Australia to commence your studies on campus. We'd love to see you. A little bit more resilience is probably going to be needed for semester one, but thank you so much for showing that amazing resilience over the last couple of years.
Thank you. Really, really good sentiment, and one that we all share, definitely. And Heidi, just a final comment from you.
Mine is definitely about advice. Make sure you get as much advice as you can. The Study Australia website, like we've said, is great, but connect with a really good agent, okay? An agent is there to make you achieve and get the study that you dream about. We as universities and higher education have written agreements with reputable agents. Okay, so if you ever want an agent list, again, the Study Australia website, or you can reach out to me and I can let you know and connect you with any agents in where you live. But an agent is imperative, and also do your research. Have a look at Study Australia, or if you know you want to study on the Gold Coast, go to Study Gold Coast and just get the best advice that you can.
Brilliant. Thank you. The thing that I learned was to make sure I called my mum. So if I do come along, to be in touch with family members, make sure you pick up the phone, even sending a message, because you're right. It's one of the things that you're so excited that might slip through the cracks. So again, thank you all very much for your presentations and for the information. It's been absolutely wonderful. So thank you all for coming along and making the time to be able to talk to the audience today. And speaking of the audience, we'd like to thank you all individually for joining us live. We know that webinars are definitely something that you need to invest time in, and we hope that we've made it as useful and engaging for you as possible. And we really do appreciate that you've chosen to speak to us, to be with us today as part of our audience. And again, to our sponsor, I'd like to thank our PTE Academic for sponsoring this particular webinar. As an English test provider, they definitely will be a part of your journey to Australia. So please feel free to check out the resources that they have. So again, thank you for everyone, and we'll hopefully see you next time for our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.